Hello, so today I am making your favorite turkey gyros. This is one of the healthier recipes that you like that I make because it's low in fat and it also tastes delicious. It's something that's really refreshing too, so you can make it during the summer or during the winter. So there are a couple components of these gyros that you like. So the first is the bread. I get the whole wheat pita pocket from Walmart, but any kind of pita bread really works well for this. I usually get the whole grain because it's quote unquote healthier for you, you know. To get with the vegetables, I go with the simple tomato and onion, and that goes underneath the meat. The meat I use is usually just butterball turkey. I usually get the chub just because it's a little cheaper, and I get the 93:7 ratio. It means that, you know, you have a little bit of that fat in there for flavor, but it's not necessarily overly watery or greasy. And then one of the most important components that you enjoy would be the tzatziki, which consists of Greek non-fat plain yogurt, and it has to be plain because if it's not plain, it's going to be gross. And non-fat obviously just contributing to the health factor. So the vegetables that go in there are cucumber. You're going to want to use an English cucumber. That's the longer one, and they're usually wrapped in plastic at the grocery store. Garlic, lemon, Cavender's all-purpose Greek seasoning. This is like the best. Onion powder, and then of course salt, or this is pepper. Obviously pepper and salt. I use the big flaky salt just because it makes me feel fancy. So the first step we're going to start with is actually making the tzatziki, and I usually go for the tzatziki first because it does need to sit for about a half an hour to really let the flavors mingle. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to peel your cucumber. I usually just give it a quick one. It doesn't need anything too bad. This is after it's washed. And you're going to want to use about 3/4 of this, so maybe not the whole thing, but you know, then you got a little snack afterwards. This makes the tzatziki taste really fresh and just delicious. It gives it such a great vegetable flavor. And I usually cut off the ends. If you don't get it all, that's fine. So I'll cut off this little end right here, and this can be the part that you eat. So you can use a veggie grater, or a lot of times I'll just chop it. I'll cut it down the middle, cut it down the middle again, and cut it into these small strips. It doesn't matter if it's uneven because at the end of the day, you're going to be chopping the hell out of it. So yeah, you start like that, and then you can rough chop it at first. You just want it into small pieces. I'm gonna do the other side. It seems like it's gonna be too much cucumber, but just trust me on this one. So once you've got your cucumber to about this consistency, it's kind of chunky, but it still has like the texture of minced garlic in there. You're going to add it to a bowl. And you're going to add about a teaspoon or so of salt. Now I usually just eyeball it because it really, you know, is kind of to taste anyway. So you give it 2 good hearty like pinches of it, and you're going to mix that, and I'm just going to use a knife because I didn't bring a spoon. And you're actually going to let that sit for about 3 minutes or so, and what that's going to do is that's going to draw some of the water out of the cucumber. And after about the 3 minutes, you're going to kind of press it over the sink and drain the cucumber, and that takes a lot of the water out of it. And makes your tzatziki, keeps your tzatziki thick, because otherwise if you just add the water and cucumber, you're going to have a super, super runny sauce. So while you're letting your cucumbers sweat, as they call it, you can take the juice of 1 lemon and get that ready. take a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of that Cavender seasoning, which is this, and a teaspoon of pepper, and put that in a dish. Or you don't have to get it set aside, but that's the measurement for it. And then you're going to need 2 of these Chobani non-fat Greek yogurts, and that's like about 5.3 ounces per container. You just want these. You can also get the generic brand. It's just that this is what the commissary has. And then you're going to need garlic. So sometimes you can just peel it right off the bat, or sometimes it's going to be a little tricky on you. And if it's just got these little spots on it, you can just cut those off. But if it is the tricky one, what you do is you put that down, you put your knife on the side, you use your palms so you're keeping your fingers out of your way, and then it comes perfectly out of there. I usually cut off the bottoms because those are dry and gross. And for this recipe, I usually use 3 to 4 cloves of garlic, and it all depends on how big the garlic cloves are. But the more garlic, the better. Whom I can.
Listen to her. Listen to her good.
Yeah, you hear that? Listen. And you just mince it to a small, kind of rough chop you can do. Okay, so off camera I drained it. There's still a little bit of liquid in there, but that's fine. So you'll add your garlic, your lemon juice, your seasoning, and your yogurt. That's gonna look watery and gross. It's fine. It's just not stirred. And you just mix. Wow, 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 wow. All right, and it's gonna look something like that. Now if you taste it now, it's not gonna taste quite right because the garlic hasn't had time to really get into that yogurt. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna cover it and put it in the fridge. So while your tzatziki's in the fridge, and like I said, you want it in there for about 30 minutes to really get those flavors working together. It gives you time to prep your vegetables. I'm an Italian. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not Italian. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to need a Roma tomato. You're going to cut it down the middle, the long way, not the short way. And then you're going to cut it again, same way. And then now you've got these really nice quarters. And when you cut these, you want them really thin because you don't want like a chunky tomato. You can always add more, but you want a good balance of like meat, vegetable, and sauce on there. So you're gonna cut them pretty thin. And I know I'm not getting very even slices here, but just, this isn't supposed to be a fancy cooking show. This is teaching you how to cook, the fundamentals. So I usually do just one because, I don't like tomato on mine, so. Be careful and don't cut yourself. Last thing we need to clean is bleeding fingers. Because then you can't use your veggies because it's contaminated. All right, and then our onion. So what I normally do, cut off both the ends. Just kind of, you don't cut through it, you just like pierce that first couple layers to peel the onion. Make sure the peels are off the cutting board because that's nasty. All right, so then normally I'll cut it in half. I'll cut it in half again. And you don't need I usually use about half an onion for this. I don't normally cut it all right away just because if it sits in the fridge for too long, it gets kind of weird. So again, you want those thin slices of onion so you can have that balance. And if you need to, you can turn it to the other side and do thin slices that way. Okay, so now you've got these beautiful thin slices. So the next part I'm going to show you is how to make it into the meat into that really nice thin patty that I usually do for the gyros. So that's just lining the pita bread. So what you're going to do is you're just going to open the chub of meat, and that's what it's called. It is called a chub. And I usually use about a quarter per gyro. So I kind of just eyeball it a little bit. Sometimes I make yours a little bit bigger because you're a big boy. Anyway, you just press it down, and actually, like a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put some Cavender seasoning on the bottom of the pan. Just a light sprinkle. And again, this Cavender stuff, best thing you'll ever taste. So you put a little bit of that on the bottom of the pan. And you just form the meat to the bottom, covering all the whole bottom side of the pan. And yes, my hands are clean, so don't come at me. And if you use a quarter pound, your gyro is going to be about a 1/4 inch thick. Really just want it flat in the bottom. And this is going to shrink, so as it cooks, it's going to in the middle of the pan. So no worries. And then you're going to wash your hands before you touch the seasoning, please. And you're going to sprinkle a little bit more Cavenders on the top, evenly. All right. And then the next step is to throw it on the stove and cook it. So the next step in this process is going to be cooking the turkey. So you want this on a medium heat, which is about a 5 or just directly down on the dial. Now it's going to take a minute just to kind of heat up, and there's not much to see at this moment, but as you see as time goes on, it will shrink up a little bit and start to cook. While you have that meat going and getting started, I would start heating up a pan also on medium heat to warm up your pita breads. So as this is cooking, you can be warming up pita breads, and you can do like 1 or 2 at a time. Alrighty, so now at this point it looks like it's about ready to flip. You'll know it's ready to flip because the edges will be kind of brown and there won't be as much pink in the center. Keep in mind this is very thin, so it really doesn't take that long. It's maybe about a 3 to 5 minute process depending on how thick it is. Then you're going to flip it over like that. And sometimes I scrape off some of that stuff, but it's not always on there. So then you let that cook for about another 2 minutes or so. And I've got the pita toasting over here, and we will then be moving on to our next step. So the last step in this process is to assemble. So what I normally do is I put the veggies down first, and I start with the tomato. I just kind of put them at an angle like that. Because again, it just makes me feel fancy. And the onion. Then the meat patty. And then you grab some of that tzatziki sauce. You stir it first, but then you like it in a dish. You don't like it directly on there. And then I found some feta. This is an optional item, but I think it just adds a little bit of pizzazz. And there you go. You've got a beautiful turkey gyro. Healthy, delicious, not fast food. Enjoy!